Hi, I'm Dr. Robin Koslowitz, YouTube's post-traumatic parenting expert. I'm here with Anger from Inside Out, and we are going to talk about how to teach your kids how to fight. Are your kids fighting all the time? Does it drive you crazy, the sibling rivalry? Are they constantly bickering, call each other names, throwing each other down to the floor, attacking each other, fighting over the most ridiculous things like some toy that nobody's touched for months, maybe even years, but the minute his little sister picks it up, your son goes for her throat? You know what I'm talking about, right? This doesn't only happen in my house occasionally, right? So if this is the kind of thing that triggers you, that as a post-traumatic parent, maybe having grown up with parents who are fighting, maybe having been bullied, maybe having grown up with other instances where unpredictability and loudness and aggression were dangerous, it's really triggering to watch this happen between your 5-year-old and your 3-year-old, between your 13-year-old and your 11-year-old. And it triggers you, and it's really scary, and you're not sure how to handle it. Maybe you freeze. Does it sound like your house? If so, if you want to hear content like this and what to do about it, that's what we're going to talk about right now. So click subscribe below so you never miss another episode. You can also find more material on this on Instagram. The post-traumatic parenting community hangs out at Dr. Koslowitz Psychology. So recently, I had a question come in on my parenting community, post-traumatic parenting, where a mom asked, how can I get my kids to stop fighting? And I suggested that that's the wrong answer. The job of a parent is not to teach their child not to fight. The job of a parent is to teach your kids how to have a good fight. You heard me right. You need to teach your kids to fight. And I don't mean take them to karate, buy them a gi, get them boxing gloves. Sometimes that's a nice thing to do, but that's not what I'm talking about here. You need to teach your kids how to have a good conflict. Adam Grant suggests that a good conflict is not you versus me. It's you and me together versus the problem. You and me are on the same side. The problem is over there. That's a good conflict. So, for example, maybe two kids both want the same toy. So right here we have this pail and we're at the beach and two kids both want the pail. And we only have one pail and both of us want the pail. So if it's you versus me, you are so mean. You always get the pail first. Mom, it's not fair. I never get the pail. You're such a baby, you know? Why you always cry and scream to mom? It's my turn. I called it. I sat on the ride over. You got to sit in the window seat and I get the pail first. And maybe there's a shove and maybe there's a push. And there went the whole pleasant day at the beach, not to mention all the other parents who are like sideways looking and thinking to themselves how glad they are it's not their kids, right? We've all been there. So here's the thing. The problem isn't Jacob versus Sarah. That's not the problem. The problem is two kids, one pail. So the problem becomes scarcity of resources. Only have one pail, and we have two people who want that pail. Now you two are going to help me problem solve around the one pail, two children problem. Jacob is not a side, Sarah's not a side. Jacob and Sarah together are going to have to work on how do we solve the two kids, one pail problem? And we might say, when we've solved the two kids, one pail problem, we can go on to something even more fun. We can have our sandcastle building contest. Soon it's going to be time to go get ice cream, right? We're going to have more preferred activities that are coming up. But meanwhile, how do we solve it? Let's be creative problem solvers. So in order to understand this approach, let's understand how anger works in our brain. So here's Anger from Inside Out. And if you remember the movie Inside Out, each emotion exists to teach us something about the world, to give us a message, to give us an action urge that goes along with its information about the world. And it suggests behaviors that we can do, right? So here we have fear. The function of fear is to warn us of danger. And the job of fear is to tell us to do one of the 4 F's, right? Fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So if the problem right now is not that we only have one pail, but the problem right now is there's a giant tidal wave crashing down on the beach, we got to run. And fear is what lets us do that. So what is the function? What is the job of anger? So you might want to show your kids these clips from Inside Out. So if you notice, the first time we meet anger, Joy says, this is anger. He cares very deeply about things being feared. And that is true. One of the functions of anger is to establish justice. It's probably the best function of anger. We should get angry when something is unjust. If my child sees a 8th grader picking on a 1st grader and my child gets angry and channels that anger appropriately into telling an adult or intervening, that would be the best possible use of anger. Because anger very often identifies injustice. Anger also identifies a boundary. So anger is what tells me, that's you, that's me. So if anger is a person and it's coming too close to me, at some point I'm going to be like, hey, back off. You're standing too close. He keeps on walking towards me. Yeah, my boundary is going to be to push back in some way. Like, do not do that. I'm going to feel a sense of anger or fear. And that anger is what's going to give me the energy to solve the problem. The most important and basic function of anger is anger identifies a problem. And Inside Out does a brilliant job of hinting that, because you will notice that in every scene of Inside Out, anger is reading a newspaper. And in every scene, there is a headline of the newspaper, and the headline of the newspaper tells you the problem. So in the first time we meet anger, Riley is being fed her dinner. Dad tries to feed her broccoli. Riley does not like broccoli. Throughout the movie, Riley does not like broccoli. And Dad tries to put a piece of broccoli into little Riley's mouth. She's like a toddler at about age 2. And Dad says, Riley, if you don't eat your broccoli, you're not going to get dessert. And you see Anger's newspaper, the headline says, no dessert. You'll notice we have a rule. So anger identifies the problem. What is the problem right now? The problem is not Dad, even though Riley is glaring angrily at Dad. The problem is no dessert. I very often say to kids, if your brother, ate your favorite, you had a popsicle in the freezer, you were saving it for after school, your brother came home, he ate your popsicle. Your problem is not your brother. Your problem is you don't have a popsicle. Because I can solve the I don't have a popsicle problem. I can't solve the your brother problem, because how am I solving the your brother problem? So another rule we have in post-traumatic parenting classes is anger identifies a problem. People cannot be problems. People's behavior can be problematic, but people cannot be problems because people cannot be solved. The technique I like to teach is called TAPS, tell about a problem solution. So the way we do it is when a child is feeling anger, my brother ate my popsicle, my brother grabbed the pail away from me, my sister's calling me a mean name, my sister sitting in the seat I want to sit in, right? Whatever the problem is, we tap. And we say, Mommy, Daddy, there's a problem. And the parent is alerted and they tap back. What's the problem? And the kid says, my sister grabbed all the crayons. Your sister grabbed all the crayons. That's a problem. I'm going to tap back, right? Your sister grabbed all the crayons. That's a problem. You have a solution? And we can think of a solution. Maybe we're going to fairly split the crayons. Maybe we're going to take turns. Maybe we're going to do a different activity until it's time for the crayons. The idea is we're helping you solve the problem. We're not helping you solve your sister. Now, you're probably all thinking, but like, sister should not have grabbed the crayons. That is 100% true. But the grabbing crayons behavior, that's between me and sister. I need to teach sister a more pro-social way of interacting. That has nothing to do with her brother. Her brother has the problem of scarcity of crayons. Sister's behavior is not the brother's problem, right? Sister's behavior is my job to work with. It's not my problem either. It's my job to work with. It's my job in life to teach sister more pro-social behaviors. My job to teach her how to be more adaptive, how to handle conflict better. That's my job. That's not brother's job. Sister's not the problem here. You don't have crayons is the problem here. Because you see, if you solved your problem, let's say on the beach, you grabbed the bucket away and, let's say, your sister ate your popsicle, right? And so you came home, you saw that your sister ate your popsicle and you shoved your sister down and she fell down and she's crying and bleeding on the floor. You used your anger to solve the problem wrongly. So now I can't really help you solve the I don't have a popsicle problem. You solved it. Took your anger, you used it to hit her. You solved your problem wrongly. Now you don't have a popsicle. I feel really bad for you, but I'm not going to give you a popsicle. I'm going to focus all of my attention on helping sister who's now in pain and crying. And you are going to have to learn that there are better ways to solve problems, because had you come to me and said, Mom, there's a problem. What's the problem? My sister ate the popsicle that I was saving for myself. I'm going to get you another popsicle. Because you used words to communicate the problem to me. And now I can then work with the problem and help you solve the problem. And what I might even do is be super proud, super attentive, super engaged, super celebratory. If I say, okay, so we have 2 kids, we have 1 bucket. How are we solving the problem? And I want to hear every single solution. Let's have a contest and see who could come up with the best solution. And maybe if the most creative, best solution is really great, maybe we get extra scoops of ice cream on our ice cream cones simply because I'm just so happy now we're having a party because we generated a solution. 1 bucket, 2 kids. We take turns filling the bucket. Maybe I get the bucket, then you get the bucket. Maybe you go collect seashells while I fill the bucket, right? There's a lot of options for how we can do things. Maybe mom sets a timer on her phone. You get the bucket for 5 minutes, you get the bucket. But the children are generating the solution. Then they feel very empowered. They don't feel like someone's imposing a solution on them. They don't feel like mom was like, you go to that corner and you go to that corner and you're going to stop fighting. They don't feel controlled. They feel like they're learning self-control. So when a child comes to me, and my children, I've taught them to do this, that like when something is starting to become a conflict, the code word in our family is, Mommy, there's a problem. And that gets my attention immediately because I know that means I'm feeling anger and I need some scaffolding into how to handle it. So I'm going to turn around and I'm going to give you my attention very quickly. It actually was so comical. There was a point where we were doing renovations in our house and there was a guy working in our kitchen. It was really complicated because like we were living in our house while these renovations were going on, and that can be very stressful. And this contractor needed my attention a lot of times. Like he needed to tell me that he needed to ask me like if I wanted him to route something through this wall or through that wall. He needed to ask me where certain things went. He needed me to move certain things. He got so used to hearing me, my children say, Mommy, there's a problem. There was some big conflict going on that day, probably having to do with having renovations in the kitchen and no room to play. That when he was trying to get my attention, he said to me, Mrs., there's a problem. I need to show you something, because he knew that saying the word there's a problem gets my attention quickly. So it was modeled so fast for him. And that's really great, because then what we're teaching children how to do is to really read their emotion. So they're not afraid of emotion. So we're undoing any tendency towards alexithymia, the inability to relate to our own emotions. We're also teaching children that emotions come with action urges. I'm angry, I want to hit, right? Every emotion carries with it the connotation of emotion. It's going to make you want to move. So anger identifies a problem. That is the naming of the emotion. I have these sensations in my body. My stomach hurts. I'm tense. I want to hit somebody. So I can tell those action urges. I can feel, I'm locating it in my body. I'm understanding it. And I'm understanding that I can be a weensy bit, I'm teaching them emotion leveling. I could be a weensy bit annoyed or frustrated, and I could be furious. And if I don't attend to the emotion when it's down here, the first time it's a problem, then by the time it becomes huge and on top of the thermometer, then I'm going to explode. And then my anger is going to explode out of me. But if I say the first time something goes wrong, like, Mommy, there's a problem. She grabbed all the crayons. Mommy, there's a problem. He grabbed the bucket and now I don't have a bucket. And I feel like I never get my first chance and he's always first. Okay. Now I know, and also I know that these resentments are starting to build up. There's a pattern here that you're feeling. So I have some clues. I'm clued in. And you're not going to hold on to a pattern for years and then it's going to come exploding out because you're used to telling me about it and we can talk it out and problem solve it and figure it out, and you get your emotions and you get what to do with them. And you get that there are better, more productive, more adaptive, and less adaptive ways to relate to your emotions. So you learn how to adapt to your emotions. That is how we have a good fight. You'll notice in Inside Out, every time Anger's newspaper says a problem, he gives Riley the idea, the impulse to handle the problem in a really not good way. When Riley's best friend calls her from Minnesota and Riley's best friend says that there's this new girl in town and she became my friend and now she has your old position on our hockey team, Anger's newspaper reads, replaced, no need for Riley. And of course, Riley gets mad and she just hangs up the Zoom call immediately because she's so mad, right? Is that Riley probably values this friendship and likes this friend? Is that a good way to keep the friend? No, but anger identifies a problem and its action urge is to say, get mad, start a fight, right? So if I angrily slam down the Zoom call, chances are that might start a fight. So anger is not the threatening thing. A lot of post-traumatic parents think getting into a fight, conflict, sibling rivalry, that these are signs that we're not good parents, or that these are signs that we're failing our kids, or there's some underlying psychopathology that's leading to them. Anger is a normal human emotion. It just identifies a problem. It tells us what our boundaries are. It tells us about injustice. That's the job of anger. What you do with your anger, that's where it can be a problem, where sometimes it can be a little bit. That's a very good use of anger. Telling me, Mommy, there's a problem. I really want the bucket and my brother grabbed it. That's a very good use of my anger. Punching my brother without any words, not such a great use of my anger. Anger is such a valuable, powerful tool. I want to teach you how to use it right. So that's how, if we train kids in that TAPS technique, that's how we can teach children how to talk about their anger. And that's how we can teach children to have a productive fight, how to have a good fight. And very often problem solving in advance is super helpful. So tomorrow we're going to be going to the beach. Chances are you're going to both want the bucket. We only have one bucket. How are we solving this problem? Who has the most creative solution? We can make it into a game. I am setting the timer on my phone. Who can come up with the most creative solution? 1, 2, 3, go, right? And like in 3 minutes, who can come up with the best solution? Kids can be really good problem solvers, especially if in the moment, their anger didn't go from 0 to 60 because we're not at the beach yet. Nobody grabbed the bucket yet. And that's the nice thing about being a parent. We have the prefrontal cortex loading where we have a lot of self-control and the ability to plan and the ability to understand the world. So I know if the last 6 times we went to the beach, we fought over the bucket, chances are we're going to fight over the bucket again. And some parents would say to me, okay, so then just buy a second bucket. While that's true, and if it's possible, sure, buy a second bucket, there's something to be said. There's some organic value in having the fight. Sometimes it's okay to not buy the second bucket, because I know sometimes parents say, like, when I'm doing gentle and responsive parenting, I feel like held hostage by my kids to keep them happy at all times. Not necessarily. If you want to say no to your child in Target because you're not buying the next randomly shaped bit of plastic that they want, you can say no. Yes, there will be a meltdown. Yes, it would be much faster to slap the meltdown out of them and stuff them into the shopping cart and take them home. And it takes a lot longer to soothe them and to soothe with them and to co-regulate, to talk them through it, and maybe even to just sort of like give an apologetic look to the other shoppers, put what you need to put in the shopping cart and leave, right? Maybe. Yeah, slapping them into being quiet would be faster. It might even be more effective in the sense if the objective is get out of Target as quickly as possible, it might even be more effective. But if the objective is to raise a really emotionally healthy, good human being, then I think that's always the objective. Getting out of Target fast in the long run, unless there's some medical emergency, getting out of Target fast is not the number one priority, even if it feels that way at the moment, because maybe our inner sense of shame is like, I got to get out of here. Everybody's looking at me. But we're going to take a step back on that, and we're going to teach our kids how to manage their emotions. So do not feel held hostage because you're trying to be responsive and gentle and conscious in your parenting. I just have to buy a second bucket. Because when it's a second bucket, sure, the bucket costs $9.99 in Target. Usually that's within reach for most parents. But sometimes it's, the left window seat in the car, and the car is only going to have one left window seat. Sometimes it's the last popsicle in the freezer, and it's 9:00 at night, and you are not going shopping to buy another set of popsicles, right? Like sometimes it's just like that. So it's worthwhile to teach children how to have a productive conflict. Because when you teach children how to have a productive conflict, then they know a skill that they have for life. Recently, one of my teenage daughters was dealing with a conflict, and a friend was really communicating in a very passive-aggressive way towards her. And she doesn't know the term passive-aggressive yet, but she came home and she said, Mom, I don't think anybody ever taught her how to have a good fight. I think she's mad at me because she's throwing out all these hints that she's mad at me. She doesn't want to tell me why. So I asked her, why are you mad at me? There's something happened. You're upset about something. Can you tell me why? And the girl said something like, that's for me to know and for you to guess. Okay, so no one taught you how to have a good fight. Now, I can't speculate. It's possible that my daughter was also at fault in whatever this conflict was, but that she pinpointed, hey, no one taught her how to have a good fight. She's right. Because if you're angry at someone, it's a lot emotionally healthier. And how many of us post-traumatic parents have passive-aggressive relatives who it would be such a relief if that passive-aggressive relative would not hint and would just say straight out, as opposed to, you're wearing that to my party, would say straight out, feel a little disrespected because I said that my party is formal, and maybe it's a generational thing, but what you're wearing is looking very casual. Can I ask that you wear something else, right? I would much rather deal with that, even if I'm like, really? Okay. Even if I disagree, at least you're telling me with clarity what the problem is. This kind of wearing that, and you say, yeah, and they're like, oh, wait, is there something wrong with what I'm wearing? Well, what do you think? Right? That's just so exhausting. No one taught you how to have a good fight. Because when we have a good fight, we say the problem or the conflict directly, and we solve it. Recently, I was consulting in a school, and I've taught this to the middle schoolers. And the teacher told me that there was this. She said this was the first year that they do these the class they do one of these things where each group creates an invention, and then they have to demo their invention to the class. And there was this whole mix-up. One group during recess time set up this whole demo across all these display tables in the front of the classroom, and they really worked hard. But there was a misprint on the schedule, and a different group was supposed to go in their slot. And the other group came in, and the teacher said in years past, she's had years past where things like that have happened, where one group dumped the other group's projects on the floor, where there was a shouting match, where there were all sorts of problems because the schedule was set up in such a way that like younger siblings could come in and view the project. So they did need to go. So instead, the two groups came and they said, oh my gosh, two groups, one set of tables, the wrong group is on the tables, but they worked really hard to put their stuff on the tables. We need an alternative solution. What should we do? So then they said, okay, we're going to borrow tables from a different classroom and like move these tables out of the way super carefully. But then one of the kids in the group who was going to be demoing said, but it's going to distract, their display is so cool, it's going to distract attention from our display. So they thought, and they decided that they're going to go to the cafeteria and get plastic tablecloths and cover the other display. The teacher said, I cannot believe it. There was such productive problem solving going on between the two groups. No one yelled. No one got mad. No one got dysregulated. There was some kids whose voices were rising a bit when, they were at an impasse. She said, I didn't have to intervene at all. I was just watching them like, wow, there's a problem here. The wrong group, the wrong tables. How do we get tables? The problem didn't become group A or group B. The problem became, we need more display tables. Okay, how do we get more display tables? Okay, the other classroom isn't doing their science, projects till tomorrow. We can borrow their display tables. Great solution. And I'm sure there's 15 other out-of-the-box solutions. And then, oh gosh, this other kid, they're going to see their project and they're going to be interested in their project more than our project. Let's cover their project then, right? There were some suggestions that didn't make sense. They'll stand in front of their project and block it. That didn't make so much sense. They tried. They came up with a solution. Anger identifies a problem. When you know what the problem is, you can think of a solution. People cannot be problems because people cannot be solved. Only problems can be solved. So yeah, even though in Inside Out, Riley is glaring at Dad, and if I would ask Riley in that moment, what's the problem here? She'd say, my dad. The problem is no dessert. And we can resolve the no dessert. Dad resolves the no dessert with the time-honored tradition that every parent of a 2-year-old has ever done, which is he goes, zoom, zoom, it's an airplane. And of course, Riley opens her mouth and eats the broccoli, and there goes that problem solved, right? People cannot be problems because people cannot be solved. But we can solve problems. And the more creative, and if we start really putting all of our attention to who can come up with the most creative solution? I cannot wait till you kids tell me what the solution to this problem is going to be. Then they really start turning their brains around to how are we solving this problem? And that is how to teach your kids how to have a good fight. So you heard it here first. It is your job as a parent to teach your kid how to fight properly, how to fight in a way that resolves the conflict. If you like this video, please click subscribe below so you never miss another episode. Let me know if there are other common parenting problems, post-traumatic parenting problems where your trauma is triggering you as you're trying to help your child deal with a dilemma and you're really worried. Is my damage damaging my kids? Because that's what we're here for. We get it. We've been there. We're post-traumatic parents too. If you wish this would have been more of a give and take, like a talk show, and you could have interacted with me, that's what I do on Instagram. I go live every Thursday night to talk about post-traumatic parenting and all things post-traumatic peopling and all things having to do with trauma, therapy, and parenting. And if you like long-form audio content, especially interviews with various post-traumatic parenting experts, check out the Post-Traumatic Parenting Podcast, available wherever you get your podcasts. You can also check out Post-Traumatic Parenting Group on Facebook, LinkedIn, a lot of ways to interact. And I love it when people comment below. And please save, subscribe, share, tell a friend. The post-traumatic parenting community grows one parent telling another parent at a time. And we are growing, and that's the grassroots effort that's getting the book out there into the world. So please, it means the world to me every time I see those subscription numbers go up, and every time you comment, you you save, you share. I really personally feel supported. I don't just play Dr. Koslowitz on YouTube. I am a real person. And when I see that support from the post-traumatic parenting community, because we all want support with post-traumatic parenting, it feels really incredible because writing a book can be a very lonely task. Till next time, see you later.